All right, let's dive into one of the great modern business sagas, the Estée Lauder companies. It's a story that has it all: audacious innovation, a crisis that almost wiped them out, and now a massive plan to reinvent a beauty empire for a whole new world.
It all kicks off with, honestly, one of the greatest marketing stunts of all time. Picture this. It's 1947. A woman named Estée Lauder has no appointment, she has no advertising budget, but she knows she has to get noticed. So she just walks into Saks Fifth Avenue and accidentally spills her perfume on the floor. Of course, the scent fills the entire department, shoppers flock over to see what's happening, and the store buyer basically has no choice but to hear her out.
And you know what? That stunt led to an $800 order. It was a massive gamble, but it paid off immediately. The entire stock sold out in just 48 hours. This proved her fundamental belief: if you can just get the product into people's hands, it'll absolutely sell itself. This wasn't just one sale, it was the birth of their entire strategy.
So the big question is, how do you take a single wild moment like that and scale it into a global powerhouse? Well, it all came down to her core vision, which was really built on two brilliant ideas. First, she basically invented what we now call high-touch retail. See, she didn't just sell jars of cream from behind a counter. She would literally sit with women while they were under the hairdryers in salons. She would touch their skin. She'd teach them how to use the products. She turned a simple purchase into a personal relationship, and that created a kind of loyalty that no advertisement could ever buy.
Her other guiding principle was this incredible confidence in the product itself. This quote just says it all, doesn't it? The product is the best advertisement. Her entire marketing philosophy was forget the expensive ads. The experience of the product was the only thing that really mattered.
And that philosophy led directly to her most famous innovation. With a tiny budget, she couldn't afford big magazine spreads. So what did she do instead? She invested in generous samples and created the gift with purchase. We see it everywhere now, but back then it was revolutionary. It wasn't just a gimmick. It was a way to get people to try the product. And it was so powerful, it became the blueprint for the entire prestige beauty industry.
And this vision just snowballed into major milestones. By 1953, they launched Youth Dew, which was a huge deal because it was a fragrance women could buy for themselves, not just wait to receive as a gift. By 1960, they were expanding to London. And then, in 1968, they launched Clinique, a totally separate brand built on science. And that was the first real clue about what their next big idea would be.
And this is where the company's strategy goes from being just a founder's brilliant vision to an unshakable corporate empire. See, instead of putting the Estée Lauder name on absolutely everything, they started to build a house of very distinct individual brands. This portfolio approach is their strategic genius. I mean, just look at it. They own Clinique for the consumer who wants science and has sensitive skin. They have MAC for professional makeup artists and the fashion-forward crowd. Then you've got La Mer for absolute peak luxury and The Ordinary for the ingredient-savvy shopper who wants value. Each brand speaks to a different person at a different price, and they do it without stepping on each other's toes.
I mean, the range inside this one company is just staggering. Think about it. On one hand, you have La Mer, this almost mythical cream with a backstory about a physicist and fermented sea kelp, and it costs over $200. Then, on the other hand, you have The Ordinary, a super clinical, no-frills serum that focuses on just one ingredient and costs about $14.
And here's the big reveal. They are both owned by the exact same company. The person buying La Mer would probably never buy The Ordinary, and vice versa, and most of them have no idea there's any connection. This invisible architecture is their deepest competitive advantage. It lets them dominate almost every single corner of the high-end beauty market.
But, you know, every incredible success story has a turning point, a crisis. And for Estée Lauder, that crisis began in the 2010s, when the company made a massive, all-in bet on a single market, China. For a decade, it was a brilliant formula that fueled insane growth. And then, that winning strategy became a near-fatal weakness.
At its absolute peak in 2021, driven by that China boom, the company was worth an unbelievable $130 billion. They were literally on top of the world.
And then, just a few short years later, the valuation completely collapsed. We're talking nearly 90% of its value just gone. It was one of the biggest value destructions in recent corporate history. So, what on earth happened?
With that over-reliance on China, combined with the total collapse of global travel after the pandemic, just hammered their sales. Revenue dropped by over $3 billion in only 3 years.
A huge piece of this puzzle was something called travel retail.
duty-free shopping in airports. At its peak, that channel made up almost a third of all their sales. So when international travel ground to a halt and the Chinese tourist market changed, that incredibly high-margin revenue just evaporated. And the impact on the bottom line was just brutal. By fiscal year 2025, the company posted an operating loss of nearly $800 million. Think about that. From a $130 billion titan to a company losing money. The crisis had well and truly hit home.
But this is not where the story ends, not by a long shot. In response, the company has launched this massive turnaround plan they're calling Beauty Reimagined, and it's built on 5 core pillars designed to reclaim their dominance.
Okay, so here's the game plan. First, speed up product development and innovation. Second, reconnect with customers on digital channels like TikTok, and yes, finally embrace Amazon. They're also pushing into other high-growth channels, actively reducing how much they depend on that volatile travel retail, and making a huge push into new markets like India and Southeast Asia.
And look, they're not starting from scratch here. Their core strengths are still very much intact. They're still the only major player focused purely on prestige beauty. They know how to patiently build brands for the long haul, their portfolio is second to none, and, this is key, the Lauder family's voting control lets them make tough, long-term decisions without having to worry about short-term pressure from Wall Street.
So this brings us to the fundamental question, right? Estée Lauder built an empire on the high-touch, personal experience you get at a department store counter. Can that DNA, that core philosophy, actually be translated to win in the fast-paced, impersonal, digital-first world of today? The next few years are going to tell us the rest of the story.